Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. The lands we know today as the Township of Centre Wellington have been home to Indigenous peoples since the time immemorial. We acknowledge that we are on treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the Township of Centre Wellington, the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee could not continue their traditional lifestyle and settled in their villages along the Credit River and in the Grand River Valley. These Indigenous nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Centre Wellington remains home to the Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Okay. Item number 3, addendums and corrections to the agenda. There's a few here. I'd like to add Stacey Barron as a delegation regarding the noise bylaw. And for item 12.1, Dave Ashton and Emily Elliott from MHBC to give a presentation. Okay, we'll move down to item 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Is there Councillor Wilton?
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I do have a conflict with agenda item 12.1. The reason is my spouse is a partner at MHBC Planning, and MHBC is providing planning services for the South Fergus Secondary Plan.
Sorry, Jeff, you're probably reading my lips, but so we have you to speak to RZ0124-8196 Wellington Road 19, West Garry. And welcome to our meeting, Mr. Boozman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. I'm hoping that maybe the sketch can be presented on the screen. This is a very simple a zone change request. This is a surplus farm resident severance application, which has been approved by the county, and the desire here is to rezone the farm to not have a dwelling. So that's be the retained parcel. On the severed parcel itself, we're asking for 2 additional special exemptions. One is to permit accessory buildings to be a total coverage of 6.6% of the parcel, and then also that one building, and that is the existing barn, be 10.5 meters high instead of 6.7%. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to address them. I would say otherwise it meets all the criteria and the application is fairly straightforward. I cannot hear you.
Guys, I just have to read this, and we're just waiting for a little bit of, so this is in, which one, sorry?
Okay, so you have to read this, and then you have to read this.
Okay. I just got to read this, Jeff, and right here. Yeah, the purpose of this public meeting is to present and receive public input regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment on the subject land known as 8196 Wellington Road 19 in the former township of West Garry. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning from A, agriculture, and EP, environmental, to protection A, agriculture exemption, and EP, environmental protection on the retained parcel to restrict residential uses. Furthermore, the amendment will seek to permit a maximum floor area of 6.6% for accessory buildings on the severed parcel and to recognize the height of the existing accessory building barn measuring at 10.5 meters. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to implement zoning regulations necessary to facilitate a farm dwelling surplus severance and to recognize existing buildings on the severed parcel. The zoning amendment is a condition of the approval of the County of Wellington Land Division Committee application B86-23. Oh. If a person or public body does not make any oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Centre Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the persons or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Centre Wellington to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at the public meeting or makes written submissions to the Township of Centre Wellington before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of the appeal before the OLT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. If anyone wishes to be notified of the adoption of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, a written request must be sent to the municipal clerk, Township of Centre Wellington, 1 McDonald Square, Elora, Ontario, NOB 1SO. Okay. How was the Madam Clerk? How was the message? How was the notification given?
Through you, Mayor Waters, notice was mailed to prescribed persons, agencies, and public bodies on or before February the 22nd. A copy of the notice was also placed in the Wellington Advertiser on February 22nd, 2024. I can therefore confirm the requirement for giving notice was completed on February the 22nd, 2024.
Okay. And I know we got ahead of you there, Mr. Boozman, but if there's anything else you would like to add to what you had said earlier.
No, that's fine. I'm open for questions if there are any.
Okay. Is there any delegations to speak to this matter?
None registered.
Okay. Okay. Response from no delegations. Questions from council. Councillor Wilton.
Thank you. Through your Mayor Waters. One question just for staff. I guess it'd be for Brett. Just thinking as I was reading through the agenda this weekend, it'd be really helpful if Chantel could add a link to the current application site. I just think members of the public might have trouble finding the current application to where there's a lot more information. So what we get in the agenda is just the one page, but there's quite a bit more from Mr. Boozman on the current applications that I think would be of interest to people, just as an example of going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council?
Oh.
No. Any other questions or comments from council? Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Through your Mayor Waters to Mr. Boozman, what are the barns going to be storing?
They're empty. They're pretty well empty. There's one is more of a shop area. The bank barn, nothing is in it. Haven't had anything in it for decades. And the plan is to keep it that way. They just like the look of the old barn, and that's why they want to keep it. The one drive shed closer to the house, again, is more of a shop than anything else, and lots of empty space.
Okay, thank you. I would want to keep the old barn too. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Did you have an additional question, Councillor Wilton? No? Okay. Okay, seeing none? Okay. I'd like to thank everyone for attending and advising council. We'll be considering the bylaw in the future council meeting. I declare this meeting closed and we'll continue with our regular agenda. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move down. We've gone past this. Now we're going to move down to presentation and announcements. I'm going to start with myself. I'm going to do a bit of a presentation on our last planning meeting held at the county, and just to bring you up, council up to date on some of the things that are happening there. At a recent county council planning committee, we talked about home efficiency transitional fund. What that is county is to develop a program for home energy efficiency transition, or HEAT. The program is to support county residents transition from to help lower greenhouse gases emissions from existing homes through home energy efficiency retrofits. And right now, the county is looking at some financial models for that. So. Next item was on the 2023 residential development monitoring. It's develop a year-end review of development applications and municipal building permits across the county. It's a check-in system for residential units supply, and really what it is to provide a listing of all the developments within the county, so we can have a listing of how many units are being built on a yearly basis. And what we're hoping, I guess, down the road, if there's opportunities to receive a nice check from the province in terms of meeting our housing obligations, this information will be very important in sort of providing that information not only for ourselves and what's happening within Wellington County, but it's also to provide information for the province. Another item we talked about was Bill 162. It's called the Get It Done Act, which is basically sort of bringing in full circle OPA 119. It's basically trying to finish that program off in terms of, and it's part of, it's an adjunct to that OPA 119. And within that document, those were the changes that came to the province. There was an extension of the boundary. That boundary was pulled back. And then we did ask for some things to be included. That was the Fergus golf course lands, and as well as 22 Park Road in Elora. Those were the two that we asked to be sort of a part of that. Now, I guess it'll be called Bill 162. And then finally, the last thing that we talked about at planning was a lab called Planning Innovation Lab Initiatives. And it's based on what it is to provide a lab that doesn't require in terms of more people to be hired, but a lab within the county staff, planning staff in particular, to sort of look at design thinking. It's a think tank on planning initiatives, and looking to share that sort of that thinking, not only for obviously for things that pertain to the county, but maybe even looking outside of that in terms of the neighboring municipality. So if we have some initiatives within our community that maybe we should take a look at and utilize the expertise of not only county staff, but bringing outside folks, we could be able to utilize that resource. And it's a real opportunity for the county. I think it's also opportunity for us to share those resources with the county. So those were some of the things that we talked about at the last planning meeting. If any opportunities for questions or comments from council. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Mayor Waters, thank you for the thorough update. I know county's planning a pavilion of some sort at the County Museum and Archives. Do you know the status of that? I know it kind of was on hold, but it might be going forward.
My understanding with that is, and I'm not on the committee, but happened to be at the last committee meeting on that.
Okay.
My understanding is, I think it's going to be taken back with staff to maybe look at some other opportunities there. There had been county council had said there is some monies in that budget. I think there was 765,000 or something, and whether there was the opportunity to use those existing funds towards that program. I think initially the part of the reason they revisited that, the cost of that potential development had moved up in the 1.2, 1.3 million. Oh. So there were some discussions at county council that could maybe go revisit that. There was also at the committee to sort of revisit that. So I think it's right now it's in staff hands, and I think we'll see it coming back forward at some point once they have some additional answers. So okay. Nothing right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over to you in terms of county council, or sorry, county, Paula, you got me thinking county, in terms of local council, in terms of maybe some of your committees. Councillor McDonald.
Through Mayor Waters, I attended Safe Communities, Wellington County. I've sent all the councillors a list, and I've asked future information to maybe come to Kendra to put on our social media. Of what's going on in Wellington County that does affect our areas. Some items of interest are Poison Prevention Week. That was March 17th to the 23rd, so that's in the past, and really we didn't do much with it, except it was probably on county's social media. Drayton Farm Show is April 10th and 11th. Harm Reduction Community Conversation, May 16th. Lions Home and Leisure Show, May 28th, 29th, 30th. Safe Kids Week, June 3rd. National Injury Prevention Day is July 5th. I think Safe Communities will be looking for some sort of endorsement on that. I'll keep you posted. Drug Poisoning Awareness Day in August. And so in preparation of all of that, without going into the whole year, Public Health will be ramping up their campaign on social media around cannabis and best ways to keep everybody safe. So some of the ideas that came up was having a lockbox to keep meds and cannabis locked in your own home. And so they've got a huge campaign coming out about that, which I think will be really important for the community. And that's about it. Some other conversations were around substance abuse that's coming up, and that they will have experts put the word out on that on social media. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Any comments or questions for Councillor McDonald concerning her committee? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Waters. I have two updates. One is the Fergus Business Improvement Area, BIA. So they had a meeting 2 weeks ago now, I think. Staff and myself provided an update on the parking strategy report that council received for information at the last council meeting. And a number of concerns were expressed regarding paid parking, in particular, paid parking in downtown Fergus. So that will be an ongoing conversation with the BIA over the months to come. So that was good. And then I guess a fun thing that's happening with the BIA is Tartan Day is coming up on Sunday, April 7th. And for more information, you can go to downtownfergus.com, but it should be a really fun day. And lots of things going on downtown Fergus. So I also have an update on the Healthy Communities Advisory Committee update. This meeting was also, I think, 2 weeks ago. There was a presentation by Ryan Maiden from our staff on the Stormwater Management Planning Study, which was well received by the committee. Presentation by Director of Community Services regarding the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which I believe the RFP has subsequently been posted. So that's exciting news for the township. Also a presentation by the Director of Infrastructure Services regarding the Active Transportation Master Plan, RFP, as well as other infrastructure projects. So that was good. There were no other updates from any of the working groups, but it's early days for those groups, so that's fine. And I just going to sneak in a good news item here. This tangentially related to the Healthy Communities Committee. So shout out to Ian Duncan, the water conservation staff, because I saw on the weekend that a number of water conservation programs are launched or about to be launched, including one where residents of Center Wellington can actually get a rebate to replace their toilet with a more water efficient one. So it's pretty cool. So good job to Ian on that. And those are my updates.
Thank you, Councillor Wilton. Yes, Councillor Evoy.
Thank you so much through you, sir. Our DEI committee continues to roll forward. Nothing specific to share with that. However, farm safety has been amazing. We did the pancake breakfast this month, and there were a record number of attendees, participants, and people helping to educate. We had councillors and senators, and of course ourselves and yourself, and hundreds of families visiting. So it was a very, very successful event, and we look forward to doing even better next time.
Yeah, that was a great event, and just a lovely, just the amount of folks through that event. My compliments to all the organizers on that. Any other comments or questions? Just wanted to add one thing. You mentioned the Lions Club are doing their event coming up. I just want to do a plug in. Our Heritage Committee is going to be having a little booth there at. I'm going to be sitting in one of those sessions there, so I'll let you know. So, but it's also an opportunity for designations of. Designations of properties as well. So which are so opportunity to come to the Lions Club thing and meet with the heritage folks, and if you want to the opportunity to push your property forward for designation, great opportunity, and also to see all the good works that the Heritage Committee does. Okay, so we're going to move down to item, if there's nothing else, we're going to move down to item number 10.1, and we're going to do delegations. And I'd like to invite Stacey up, Stacey Barron. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you for having me, everyone. So I'm just here today to discuss the proposed noise bylaw. There we go. Proposed noise bylaw that you're going to be looking at tonight and possibly adopting. And I'm just going to be requesting that we just take a moment with that. Okay. So, hello, thank you for your time this evening to discuss the issues I have proposed for the noise bylaw. I've just spent the better part of my weekend reviewing noise bylaws across the country, and I am now pretty well versed in this. I have been informed that the town of Minto and Puss Lynch think that the new bylaw is awesome and have adopted it, and this document was most certainly designed for them and not for our town, which had 750,000 visitors in the last year and a half. Our village of Elora is ranked in the top 5 destinations as a lovely destination in Ontario to visit. No doubt, our proximity to Toronto, the huge efforts of the Elora BIA to beautify this town, paying for flowers, benches, nicer garbage bins, not to mention the facade upgrades we have all invested in the last decade. However, as I have stood before council on this issue before, and again this evening, is that we are turning into Grand Bend in the high tourist season, instead of keeping and leading with the aura and energy of Bayfield. I know where I live, which is downtown, over and around my business of the Elora Pottery. My good friends predominantly live above the shops around me, and some of them over their own businesses. Many of my friends rent over the shops and restaurants as well, and some have been doing so for over 30 years. We live here, work here, many of us, and do need to sleep in order to get up and receive our community every day. Whether it's to serve them coffee, make them bread, or approve a real estate offer, we also, with other people living over these establishments who have home offices and have been finding it difficult to work with the gong show we now find ourselves in. Normal jobs that keep communities bright, vibrant, and a place we wish to live and indulge in. For the last 6 years, we have endured an increase of liquor licenses and operators not managing their service. The AGCO has had to increase their presence and fine a few of our establishments for overserving. We have also had an increase in drunk driving as a result, and a few of these Allura owners have themselves been charged and convicted of DUIs. With all of this increase in competition for tourism dollars, our restaurants and bars have been installing speakers on their patios, live music, and on some days in the summer, it is like a live band war with the owners competing. Our township staff promised a new and improved noise bylaw that would cover our commercial enterprises, as our previous noise bylaw was residential only. I have been looking forward to a new bylaw that would cover off our downtown, and I'm really disappointed in what has been produced. It needs tweaking, not a rewrite, and that is the good news in all of this. I have many questions and comments, and wondering where our public meeting was for input. Did I miss it? Was the economic development team given an opportunity to review this document, or Healthy Growth, Vibrant Communities asked for input? We are a unique community and a broader bylaw that covers our concerns in our tourist town. The excuse that our bylaw is county-wide and for the OPP to follow and needs to include sleepier municipalities like Minto is very weak. If Minto doesn't have outdoor patios with speakers and this particular section doesn't apply to them, then fine. There are no farms in urban Allura, but farms are referenced 10 times in this bylaw document. Do I think it should be taken out? No. There are some other highlights of words not mentioned in this document. Fireworks, and I have noticed that they are included in other municipalities across Canada, at least for what the fee is for breaking their firework bans and running them off. And that was actually $500. Idling of vehicles, and this was in the old bylaw, section 5, and it's not included in this document. Busking. They come into town and put their speakers on loud wherever they want. Music is mentioned exactly one time in this document. The word penalty is mentioned one time. Fines isn't listed anywhere, nor is howling, barking, whining, or similar with regards to pets. The words fighting, screaming, shouting obscenities is also not included. The word persons starts in section 3, as no person shall make any noise which is likely to disturb the inhabitants of the community. So if the Porch Light Bar has music and speakers flowing out of inside the bar, will the argument be that they aren't a person, so this doesn't apply? Section 3.1 is very arbitrary. No person shall make any noise which is likely to disturb the inhabitants of the municipality. Who decides what noise is? It's arbitrary and needs definitions, and a sound guide that other communities have in their bylaws can be included in ours. Copy and paste. Shouting is in 3.2, and it's the words persistent are included. Again, that is an arbitrary word. Section 3.2, and don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of it. I just have a couple of highlights. So R says the operation of any air conditioner, heat pump, pool pump, etc., is not permitted, which is in not good working order. Well, lots of old equipment that works just fine can make a lot of noise. Here is an example of wording that is more curated with this in mind. So another bylaw was no person shall permit or cause the emission of sound from a stationary source or residential air conditioner that, when measured with a sound level meter at a point of reception, and that those words are included in our definitions, has a sound level expressed for a 1 hour period exceeding 50 decibels, etc. Okay, so we just need to have some guidelines in our bylaws so that we have something to work from. An exclusion for that, so if we feel like, oh, well, that is, where the exclusion's going to go, the second part of that was subsection A does not apply to emission of sound from a stationary source that is in compliance with the provincial environmental approval. Okay, so there can be exclusions. Where I go back to being concerned is section 3.2F, when selling, hawking, advertising, or outcry of amplified sounds. This just refers to vehicles like ice cream trucks or food trucks with speakers. Is this where we get our music patio reference? I did not read it in this way, but it was pointed out to me that yes, this is it. It's not clear. There is no mention that noise is prohibited outside a religious ceremony or in a place of worship. Here is what is missing in our document. No person shall make or cause and permit the emission of sound that disturbs a religious ceremony in a place of worship. I am not religious, but I respect and insist that these institutions be protected. Again, this is missing. In Calgary, what they did was they created non-residential development prohibitive sounds that are continuous, and they include some numbers. Again, like it can't be over 85 decibels over a measured period of time. The same thing for in Edmonton in residential areas. It can't be over 65 decibels between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., right? Because we want to have nice, quiet communities. There is no mention of lawnmowers or leaf blowers, and moreover, the police are OPP. Is not listed in our bylaw. There's no list of fines or penalties. Where is the rest of this document? Who are we to call at 10 a.m. if music is blaring from anywhere, even outside of the downtown? To be clear about what is acceptable and having it on paper just makes Satnam's job, he's our bylaw officer for those who don't know, easier, not more difficult. It is a waste of taxpayer dollars to have him sit in the courthouse to argue the township noise bylaw weak wording. Let's get more specific. Let's get it right. I'm happy to offer support, research, and data on this free of charge because this issue is that important to our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you to you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm going to try and keep it so I make sure I follow the rules. Is looking for clarification. Are you looking? I agree with you on many points. Like 3.1 was very ambiguous. 3.2 be about. Are you looking for us to add more details and to deepen the extent of this, or just to look at what is currently there?
I would like us to enhance this bylaw and not take a year to do it. This is like a hardcore workshop in an afternoon for 4 hours with the right people to just add some particulars, some sound guides with what science has shown us that the noise that dishwashers make or the sound that air compressors make and what have you, and just have them included. It's a good start and it's almost finished. I don't want us to lose hope because I really do want this in place more than anybody here.
Councillor McDonald.
You, Mayor Waters. Thank you so much for coming. This bylaw has been a long time coming, and I know it has taken a lot of time. And so I guess my question would be probably to our clerk as head of bylaw. Why don't we have a public meeting for something like this? Is it not included in what we're doing? And my other concern is, I know with OPP, they need to have teeth, and our bylaw officers need to have teeth. So if anything goes to court, it needs to have teeth. Yeah. Thank you.
Excuse me, through you, Mayor Waters. I can answer the first part, but I would think wait until our later on in the agenda when we make our presentation. Satnam's here, so he'll help with part two. But there is no requirement to have a public meeting on a noise bylaw.
Anyone else would like to ask a question in terms of clarification? I gotta take a little bit of liberty here. In terms of you said you looked at the world of bylaws. Yes. Was there? Yes, and well, and of course. So was there anyone like I would say a local, which is kind of similar, like maybe Niagara on the Lake, or did you look at any of those places in terms of their noise bylaws or any of that? Where I'm just thinking of sort of some tangible example of where maybe your head's at in terms of that. I know you said maybe this just needs to be clarified a little bit in terms of that, but were there examples out there of other communities similar to ours that you would say that they have it right?
I did look at Niagara on the Lake. And I don't have it in front of me, so it's either them or Hamilton that allows a dog to persistently bark for 10 days before someone can come in and do something. So I would say that their bylaws probably need updating, just like ours. Yeah.
Yeah, so it probably is, there's nothing really perfect out there, but it's, but you're suggesting that maybe there's some areas in here that we can go a little ways to improve, and then we might be better served by that without having to sort of reinvent the wheel here. Yeah. Okay.
There's definitely enough examples out there. They're all tabs on my computer that we could look at that just will make things simple. Like even with the, with the trucks that come into town with the horns. Okay, is that just specific to them? Because when it says like ambient noise, it's in the same section, but does that mean from patios? Mm-hmm. Right? And, just even like off the downtown issues, how about like the air conditioner thing, right? I would really like to see some science in here a little bit more with regards to the guide levels so that they can stand, they can to have their meter. And you know what? When we have that in place and the owners and the community know that's what the guy's going to be coming with, it's an incentive to not have that visit, because it's not going to be arbitrary anymore. It's going to be specific to, this is our bylaw, this is what our community is deemed acceptable. Like for, having a ghetto blaster going on all day long with a guy outside gardening. Yeah, maybe not everybody doesn't want to listen to that. There's headphones now, there's technology. Yeah, right? So we just need to just tighten it up.
And I really appreciate your input here, because I know what you've gone through over the number of years. So anyways, okay. Thank you, Stacey, for that presentation. So now we'll get back to it. We'll circle back on this. And now we're going to move down to consent items. So I'll just read. Yes, go ahead. Oh. Yeah. Yes, so I'll just read this. So we're all very clear on this. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and voted on and collectively. However, any member of council may request one or more items to be removed from consent agenda for separate discussion and or action. So we have a recommendation that the Council Township of Centre Wellington approve consent agenda items 11.1 through to 11.8. Do I have a mover? Oh, are you asking to have something? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Nothing that really changes the recommendations, just looking for a couple questions or discussion on a couple items. There's 3 items, actually. The January council minutes, the Economic Development Advisory Committee minutes, and the emergency sanitary sewer replacement, please.
You want to just go order by, or just?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so for the January minutes there, we had talked about the Strathallan development. And I know I think we've been contacted by a lot of residents talking about the traffic concerns in the area. And Colin, I think you had mentioned in one of the meetings about some additional work that was going to be taking place there. Or if you could just confirm if a further traffic study will be taking place in terms of like the future state with the new development and the potential school going in there.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Adams, and through Mayor Waters. So, so I guess there's a couple things on the go. We've got had some discussions with St. Joseph's School administration, just in response to some concerns with the kind of the school hours, the drop-off pickup times in the crossing of St. David Street there. So we've got some initiatives on the way to kind of address some of those concerns. And I would also add there's opportunity, I think, in the future to look at traffic safety, to look at traffic management in that area. Quite often through the development process, we have the ability to request a traffic impact study. And so, that's an opportunity, I think, here to just examine in more detail kind of the changes that the development would be causing, increases in traffic flow, and then any modifications that the township would need to do in response.
Yes, Councillor Wilton.
Just while we stay on the January meeting minutes, we did have a recorded vote in that meeting on item number 11.3, and that does not show up in the minutes. So I'm just curious if that can be amended to record the recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Anything else on these consent agendas? Okay, so we had a recommendation. So do we have a mover? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I thought you meant any more questions on the January minutes. Sorry. And again, there nothing wrong with the recommendations at all. Just looking to get a bit of clarification on the economic development minutes. There was the reference to the economic development action plan. I think there was a little bit confusion, as I think some of us saw the old strategic plan being used for that. I believe what it was bringing a report about what had been done with that old work plan, but I'm just wondering if we could just get a little clarification on that and when the new strategic plan will be brought into those conversations.
One can speak to that, or Brett?
I can. The item that's referenced in this minutes is referring to status of the prior strategic action plan. The terms of reference for the tourism and economic development strategic plan are still being developed.
So just to clarify, so we would currently use the previous council strategic plan to guide those actions, not our strategic plan until the economic development master plan gets completed?
Through Mayor Waters, we're actually using the current strategic plan and the current business plan passed by council as part of the 2024 budget.
Okay.
I think the intent was just to show the committee what had been accomplished in recent history, but we are moving forward based on this council's direction.
Okay, thank you. The last one, I just know there was a lot of talk about, a lot on social media about, and just reading the report, it looked like that the potential source of the issue was a bacteria. I don't know if there was anything that we can elaborate on and whether that's a concern elsewhere, and just confirming budget impacts.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and through Mayor Waters. So at the time, staff inspected through CCTV kind of the sanitary sewer system in the vicinity. You'll notice through the report, the repairs were done in phases. So as we got new information and discovered kind of poor condition sewer, kind of the scope of the project expanded. So the areas that are remaining, we're confident of the condition. We do have some concern about one length of pipe on Metcalf that is probably going to end up in our 10-year capital forecast that we'll talk about at budget time. But beyond that, it's a different pipe material, and that seems to be a bit more resilient to what was happening. But you're quite correct. Yeah, there's an actual technical term for what the phenomenon that we were seeing. So this microbial induced concrete corrosion, and just speaking to some experts in the concrete pipe field, it's not an uncommon thing where there's high concentrations of hydrogen sulfide gas kind of reacting in that sewer environment. So we've confident we've dealt with the kind of urgent issues and that we can deal with the rest through our capital program. Yeah.
Recommendation again that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approves consent agenda items 11.1 through 11.8 as amended. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Welton, seconder on that, Councillor McDonald. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Okay. Consideration, we're going to move down to item 12, consideration of reports. So we're, okay. But don't go away.
Say something.
Yeah. As because with
to introduce it first.
yeah, I can I'll just read this and then I'll ask. Okay. We have a decision report, South Fergus Secondary Plan, OPA 14, and Master Environmental Service Plan, MESP. And Brett, would you like to speak to this first on this, please?
Sure. I will just start off by introducing David Aston and Emily Ellett from MHBC. They're the consultants that have been retained to do the work on behalf of the landowners and the township, working in partnership. And then when they're done and answer your questions, then I can come back and deliver the staff report. And I would also like to point out that Deanna Maiden from my staff, the senior development planner, is also here, and she's kind of put together the final documents and ensured this presentation came together. So she's here as well to help answer questions.
So Dave, if you'd like to, Mr. Aspen, if you'd like to come up, and as Emily, are you just going to hang back, as they say? Okay. Welcome to our council chambers, David.
Great, thanks. Council, it's nice to be here. It's always exciting getting a project started, and it's always exciting getting a project to the finish line. So we're happy to be here this evening to present to you the secondary plan for the South Fergus area, and also the Master Environmental Servicing Plan conclusions and recommendations for consideration as well. I'll just go through the material really at a high level. A couple things I would note is that we worked with Brett and Deanna on getting all of the material uploaded to Connect CW, I think last week. So all of that information has been up and available, which includes the most recent reports and information and the purpose of the meeting this evening. And I also want to thank Brett and Deanna and others of his team, and Colin and the consultants from the township that we worked with to get to this point this evening. Just as far as what I want to cover is really the purpose, give some overview of the public consultation that we had, the feedback that we had. We did have a number of PICs and the public meeting, and then just go through some of the recommendations from the Master Environmental Servicing Plan and talk a bit about what the next steps would look like. So as far as the secondary plan and Master Environmental Servicing Plan, what happens is working in an integrated approach with a secondary plan and Master Environmental Servicing Plan, it really gives the information all as really a one-stop shop as far as understanding the natural environment, agricultural impacts, archaeological assessments, engineering related items, stormwater management, consideration to parks and trails and location of those facilities into one broad plan. And so the secondary plan is establishing the land use that will give direction to future planning applications, which would include zoning bylaw amendment, plans of subdivision, site plans. And the MESP has established recommendations associated with infrastructure planning for the area. And this would be integrated with the work that the township is doing as well. So as far as the process, we worked through a number of stages. This is really the final stage. You can see along the way we had a few PIC meetings. One of them was the larger kind of township town hall, I guess I'll call it, at the arena, where that's probably where we had most of the public ask questions and give some comments. Throughout the entire process and the PIC meetings, there was a handful of comments and residents involved. I think I would say most of the comments were fairly positive, and a lot of discussion and direction just on wanting to make sure that this community provides for active transportation, good design, a good mix of uses and housing opportunities. That's really what we heard from the community. So our team included ourselves, environmental consultant, engineers, financial consultant that looked at the financial impact, so understanding the infrastructure required, development charges and taxes that would be received, and understanding some of the long-term costs and cost cycles for that, and archaeological. We had the technical advisory committee, which included the township, Wellington County, and GRCA staff. So also want to acknowledge all the work from them. They were involved in a number of technical advisory committee meetings and providing comments along the way on both the MESP and the secondary plan. So public consultation, this is just a high-level summary of the various components. There was first PIC to introduce the study and the purpose of the study, the next to share alternative concepts, some options and preferred approach, and then present summary of findings, and then the conclusions of the MESP and the secondary plan. And then in July, we had the formal public meeting. As I mentioned, what have we heard through the process? That a range and mix of residential dwelling types, establishing a gateway, an important entrance or design element into the community, discouraging strip commercial along Tower Street, and many of these I'll speak to as I get to the land use plan. Designing Tower Street and Second Line to reflect a prominent intersection. So again, a lot about the gateway. What is it that residents see, visitors see when they are coming into the community? Consideration of a rural-urban interface, preservation of natural heritage features, consideration of sustainable design measures, impact on the existing road network, active transportation options. So, this as a new planned community, sidewalks, trails, parks, and how are those all interconnected? Specific comments with regard to servicing lands to the northwest of the study area and making sure that it's feasible for those lands to connect in the future, should that be an option. And then looking at the stormwater management strategy to limit potential for drainage issues on lands adjacent. So again, lands to the north. So the secondary plan is adding the land use planning framework for the South Fergus lands. So this is Schedule A, is to be updated and to identify a special policy area for the South Fergus lands. The Schedule B that will be added into the plan, this is the land use plan that identifies a mix of different types of housing, low density, medium density, and a mixed use corridor, which provides for, I'd call some medium higher density type alternatives that also has the potential for ground floor commercial or mixed use buildings. a gateway commercial at the kind of entry into the community. So a broad range of different types of uses. The plan also identifies a community park and neighborhood parks on the plan. So those locations, final locations and sizes would be determined future applications, but direction is provided in the policies. And a future school location, we had a number of discussions with the school board to ensure their input and their assistance in identifying the best location for a future school. So the next few slides just, again, give you a bit of an idea of the types of uses and some examples of what's being proposed in those areas. Low density residential, here we're really looking to provide an opportunity that is a mix within that area. So low density includes single detached and semi-detached and triplexes and street townhouses and secondary dwellings. So much more flexible approach to looking at low density residential area. Medium density residential, multiple dwellings, including all types of townhouses, triplexes, and apartments. The mixed-use corridor, a broad range and mix of residential, commercial, retail uses. Again, the concept of ground floor commercial, we recognize that not every building may have ground floor commercial, but we certainly want to encourage the opportunity for that. And gateway commercial, a full range of commercial and retail uses. There's a lot of design direction in the design guidelines associated with what's encouraged in this location, active uses, direction for where parking will be. So as you drive into the community, you're not looking at parking lots. And then, so different types of uses in the gateway commercial. And just parks and open space and natural heritage areas, which are fairly typical of any community. From a MESP perspective, just a few slides on the preferred servicing plans. This is a preferred water main servicing plan. Fairly straightforward as far as connecting the community with existing infrastructure and extending that existing infrastructure into the future development, essentially with the trunk water mains following the main collector road locations. The stormwater management plan, this plan is illustrating the various catchment areas. So the stormwater management plan looked somewhat external, where the catchment areas expanded outside of the South Fergus area to make sure that those areas were also considered in the planning for South Fergus. So there's 2 new swim facilities proposed and upgrading or additional work to the existing stormwater management facility associated with the future proposed development. From a sanitary perspective, there's really 2 phases associated with the development. The first phase is what I call more the northeast portion of the secondary plan area, which can be drained from a sanitary perspective to existing infrastructure. Then there's the southeast and the west portion that ultimately will drain to a pumping station on the west side that will then pump to Guelph Street, ultimately to the Union Street pumping station. And this approach has considered the feasibility and the ability of the lands to the northwest to be connected to future municipal services in the future, if that's an option that the township wished to consider. So a lot of work was done. I'm not sure Colin may know the number of alternatives we looked at, but there was a lot of work done on looking at sanitary servicing alternatives, potential for gravity servicing, looking at the pumping station location, in real effort to really understand the planning for the area and long-term considerations for South Fergus and really the broader sanitary servicing area. So this evening, our request is adoption of the secondary plan and endorsement of the MESP. And if the MESP is endorsed, we'll work with township staff to issue the notice of study completion. That's a requirement under the Class EA, which we're following an integrated approach for the MESP. And my final slide, thank you. And again, I do want to acknowledge all the work from Emily, all the work from our team, our consulting team, and from your township staff team. It's been a lot of work, and we're very pleased with what we're here before you recommending this evening.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Adams.
Through you. Thank you, Mayor. When we take a look at the map you had up with the land use, the colored map there. So did it change from the public meeting to what we're being presented now? Like you had said that based on a lot of the residents and feedback and everything in the public meeting, there was lots of talk about green space and active transportation. I'm still seeing just like the 2 neighborhood parks and 1 community park. So is there any, like, was there much differences in what was presented at the public meeting in that and this, or no, it's the same?
Through Mayor to Council, it is the same. When I referenced the comments, those were not just from the public meeting to now. Those are kind of overall. So
okay,
that's kind of what we heard overall. And I think if I were to suggest the comments from the community, it was more of making sure that they were connected, and not that there was a concern there wasn't enough parkland. It was more making sure that let's make sure there's trails and it's an active community, so we can have a park connected to a trail, to a safe sidewalk, so that we can walk throughout the community.
Other comments or questions for Dave? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. One of my questions was within talking about wanting like a visual prominence of the intersection and having, like, I remember with the public meeting, we had a lot of discussion around having a gateway into Fergus, because this would be the southern edge. Everybody's coming in, and we wanted it to be kind of eye-catching and appealing and everything like that. And then I'm noticing that it's the pink area, which is the zoning that is going to be allowing up to 8 stories. And it's going to be residential over commercial, and up to 8 stories and apartment buildings and things like that. And I'm just not understanding how, if we're creating a tunnel effect down the Highway 6 on your approach in, or in that general vicinity as you're coming into Highway 6, how that's getting the vision from what we had kind of discussed at our public meeting. I'm sure it can be accomplished, but like you're also saying that you don't want people to come in to see parking lots and things like that, but you're not going to see much of anything if all we have is 8-story buildings or up to 8-story in height along that one section. I'm just not seeing the connectivity between this and then what we had discussed at the public meeting for kind of what the council, not speaking on behalf of the council, but some members of council had expressed a concern for having as a gateway to Fergus. And then I'm also with the 8 stories in the apartment buildings, and if we do choose to go up to 8 stories in that area, that the location of the parks for playgrounds for the kids that will be living in the apartment buildings and having to walk further distances to get to a neighborhood park or a community park, that's not attractive to have an apartment on Highway 6, but then the park is like 5 blocks that way for the little ones to walk to. It's just, the connectivity we were wanting with the active transportation to get to the parks, but then also the features of the people that are going to be living in the subdivisions and what they are going to be wanting to do in that subdivision. And if it's out of reach for what we're anticipating for where we're just plunking them in. Sorry, if that makes sense.
To your mayor, a couple things on what I'll try to respond to a couple of things that I think you're asking or commenting on. With regard to the gateway commercial, what I would suggest is there's two things that will give direction to that commercial area. Number one is policies that are in the secondary plan. There's a whole section on encouragement of standard of design within that designation. And it talks about, landscaping, lighting, where buildings should be located, where parking is encouraged to be located, how active transportation connects with adjacent lands, how linkages are between buildings, and signage and, compatibility and integration with adjacent residential uses. So that's policy direction in the secondary plan. The other document that is kind of feeding into what that design will look like is the design guidelines that were prepared. And that gives some additional direction to how those lands would be considered and how the township will consider the development of those lands at the time of any future applications. With regard to the parks, we actually tried to locate the parks and show them on a plan in general areas. Again, as plans of subdivision come in, those may evolve. We know the community park location near the school in that area is fairly central. So we think that's the right location for that. The neighborhood parks and how we looked at parks is we did look at where we thought the larger density would be and then have an understanding of walking distance. So those parks are within walking distance of kind of the density that's proposed along Tower Street. The other thing as far as parks and amenities and spaces for people living in those areas, there's what I'd call the public parks and active, and then each of those blocks would also need to address on-site amenity requirements. So an on-site amenity requirements likely could include some smaller playground for children. These are my experiences, what I've seen in these scale of development. Some smaller playgrounds, play areas, seating areas, landscape areas. So those specific developments would have amenities that could then also connect to the public spaces. So that's kind of the gateway commercial. With regard to the design along Tower Street, I think the way the policies are written and the way that the zoning can unfold is that from a design perspective, I don't think that it would be creating kind of a, I don't know if you said a canyon effect or I'm not sure how you said it, because with the land uses and how the mix of uses are proposed, a gateway with something 8 stories, there then is a good break, between the massing just because of the natural area and the stormwater management pond. So as you travel along Tower Street, I think there's a good break of land use and mix of land use so that it's not going to create this effect of that it's just all, tall buildings pushed to the street.
Is it a follow-up or? Okay, yep.
Okay, then just for a follow-up, when you were saying about encouraging the design standards, I only saw that listed underneath the gateway, I think, the gateway commercial zoning section. It's not applicable to all the, I know design standards comes site plan. But just with the encouraging of design standards for just the gateway, I believe, was it not? It wasn't for all of the different zoning?
Through Mayor, I think there's specific direction associated with the gateway. And then there are general policies associated with the urban design guidelines as far as how those would be considered. So, and what the secondary plan is also requiring is there's an administration section, then there's a development review section. And under that section, there's a list of further studies that would be required with any application on the lands. And that's where there's a further urban design brief that identifies how the development application is in keeping with the South Fergus urban design guidelines. So the policies are set up so there's a bit of a tier. There's the urban design guidelines for South Fergus. And then when someone comes in with a site plan or plan a subdivision, they then need to take and complete their design brief that indicates how that design reflects back to the South Fergus design guidelines.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I don't mean to harp on the gateway and Highway 6 there. And, you know, I think this is going to be an extension of our current community, and we want to connect in every aspect. So I am concerned about Highway 6, walking and incorporating all of that. Will that come later, or is that included here? I know we'll have to work with MTO and all that stuff, but, you know, I want it to be a forefront of how someone can walk from their home and decide to walk across Highway 6. And it has to be some sort of calming. I understand the policies behind it, but it really, I'd just like to see something tangible in the document where we're putting active living at a forefront in a really safe way throughout the whole thing, and connecting it with Highway 6, because it will. And yeah.
Through Mayor Waters, active transportation was one thing that we have talked about a lot, and we've talked about in the context of the design guidelines, the transportation work, and really tried to integrate it overall and established in the transportation policies a specific section on active transportation that talks about those types of connections and multi-use paths. And it's not just about sidewalks. It's about the multi-use path on a collector road, the off-road trail. And so all of those are to be integrated in a broader system. Crossing Highway 6 is a challenge. And, you know, we acknowledge that. And I think the crossing, probably what we're looking at is how do we direct people to the safest crossings possible? And that could be the intersection at Second Line. We don't know exactly what MTO is going to do there, but they're going to do something, whether it's signals or a roundabout. There'll be some type of traffic improvement there. And then there's the existing lights where, again, we could look at the opportunity for crossing there. So we've looked at how we can connect the sidewalks, the collector road with on-site multi-use trail and bike lanes throughout the community, and then how best to direct people to the safest crossings of Highway 6. We don't want to obviously encourage them crossing not at a safe space. And so we may need to use some other design tools as well to ensure that that's not happening and people are directed to the right locations.
So the path around Groves Hospital is great. You can bike, you can walk, you can do it all. Yeah, so I'd love to see something like that. And is that what you meant by, you know, the paths that you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so those work very well for all.
Yep.
So thank you. Yes.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Thank you so much. Something one of my colleagues asked, I am the first one to say I don't always get all that you're saying in so much in one bit. But I heard someone ask, so so you had that public meeting, you heard what they said they wanted. And while I completely and respectfully appreciate the fact that you've talked about and you've looked at, as you referred to, implementing some of these changes, and I really respect the need for this growth, I'm not sure I completely understand that you have taken the voice of the community and made those changes. And I'm just wondering, in clear language, because I don't speak your language very well yet, will those changes, can we expect all the requests of the public to actually be coming in? At what point might we expect to see some of those?
Through Mayor Waters. So from the public meeting, I was here at the public meeting. I think there were 3 people that spoke at the public meeting, or 3 key issues at the public meeting. And then there were council questions and comments. At the public meeting, there was a comment related to the impact of these lands on agricultural lands. And so we established some design consideration as far as how the urban interfaces with the rural. We know this is an urban area. We know there's an agricultural area, but we did look at ways to try and minimize, for example, rear lighting onto second line or driveways onto second line, and then look at how can we orient units so that there's some landscaping. So you're not looking at back fences or back of homes, but maybe there's the side of a home with some landscaping and it's broken up. So it's not, a wall of people's backyard. So we looked at that. The other comment, a couple comments we received was making sure that the sanitary was designed so that it would give consideration for the existing rural, it's not rural, but the existing estate residential enclave that's on private services. So we've worked with township staff and our engineers to make sure that the sanitary infrastructure that's planned to be put in place can accommodate both at a depth and at a size those lands if they want to connect in the future. And then I think the third was talking about some of the pedestrian crossing, which we just talked about. And then my recall, some of the council comments were on the design guidelines and can we provide some additional information and direction in the design guidelines. So we worked back through the design guidelines and made those changes to incorporate the comments that we received from council.
Thank you. Following up through you, sir, with his permission. So again, I hear again that you've looked at it. So with the council comments and some of the other things you've just reiterated again, is that something that you have plans to change, or you will change, or you just looked at it and talked about it? I'm just not sure where you land. I don't need the technicalities. I'm just not sure exactly where that lands.
Through Mayor Waters, I would say that we have heard the comments and we made the changes. And the document before you this evening reflects comments that we've heard, and we've incorporated those within these documents to the best that we can at the level of these documents.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through your mayor. It's first, I would like to acknowledge, I know there's a lot of residents up in those Northwest Crescents. They'll be very happy to hear that. And I would encourage early communication with those owners as well, because I know a lot of them are dealing with aging infrastructure up there, and they're kind of looking of they're kind of unsure when this will be coming, and they're kind of debating on do I go and I spend all this money to replace this aging infrastructure, or how long will this be? So I would encourage some early conversations with those residents. Following up actually back to Councillor McDonald's point, I do think, and the whole theme of active transportation, the safe crossing, I think, of Highway 6 is going to be key in this development. And when you look at the potential second line as that active, the place where you're going to encourage them, that's the furthest section out, furthest away from, the mixed use medium density, furthest away from the proposed school. To me, obviously, there's no name for that new intersection there that's going right by the natural heritage. But for me, that would make the most sense because that's headed to like the school, to make that a safe priority zone, right? Where you're going to encourage safe crossing there on Highway 6, as opposed to Second Line, which is further out. People aren't going to go out to come back just to cross. They're just going to make their way across there and cross their fingers and hope the safety crossing guard has shown up that day. So I do have my concern there. Also, going back to the dense, we're talking about the biggest density of housing we're going to see in Center Wellington, and already one of the busiest areas in Center Wellington. And I know we're low in parkland dedication. So seeing two tiny little neighborhood park locations seems kind of a little unsettling. And I think right now is the time where we make our mark and we make know what our priorities are. And I know before we've, put a park and we've kind of taken a line and we've gone around to say like how far those parks are away from people, but it's not necessarily how far you away from a park. It's about how many people are being serviced by that park. And when you have how many potential increased residential units here?
Through Mayor, there's about 6,000 people.
So you have 6,000 people and we have two little green neighborhood parks location on that. I see that very concerning if we say that this is our priority. And I think we need a little bit of different standard there.
Through Mayor Waters, could I get the presentation? I have a slide that might help. Back up. This one might help. So ignore that it's talking about water mains and let's talk about active transportation on this. But first I get to that on the residential enclave. So if this is endorsed, there'll be notice of completion. I think almost all of them came out to the various public meetings and signed up. So hopefully they'll get notice, and if not, we can work with township staff on that. With regard to active transportation, I wanted to put this slide up because this is, and parks, this at a high level where we're talking about land use and ideas for parkland locations. The parkland policies of the document speak to the neighborhood park and where that will be located, and then also a community park and the general size and what the township is looking for that community park. The neighborhood parks, what I would suggest is this plan is just identifying possible locations. As it moves into a plan of subdivision, the township will require, I'm guessing, parkland dedication under the Planning Act. And then that will be the maximum requirement that the township can take for parkland. And it could be in these locations. And if something comes up different through that process, this is not suggesting that it's fixed. This is just giving some idea of potential locations. And the idea around these locations was on the east side to locate it adjacent to there's a hedgerow there that we're looking to maintain and have a north-south pedestrian trail. So this would be kind of your off-road multi-use trail that would connect north and south through the lands. So that park would be kind of an extension and connection of that multi-use trail, and opportunity as well for trails that could be on the buffers of the natural areas. So we're trying to maximize public infrastructure in a greenway where there's a storm pond, a park, and natural area, which will the park will be a certain area, but it will seem to be a larger area because we can utilize that space for the park, which could be the active space, and the trails to the storm pond, the natural area, and the off-road for kind of active, usable space. On the west side, we've got the community park, which is the larger park connected with the trail heading north-south adjacent to the school, which will also have facilities with it, play areas, basketball courts, or whatever it may be. So that's why we put that in the north part of kind of the west side, if you will. And then the south side, again, we're looking to build on how could the park be around the heritage structure, and maybe there's something there that the park and the heritage structure could tell a bit of a story about the heritage and also park. And it's also located at the corner where I would suggest where the most density is proposed. So we tried to do our best to locate those parks. There'll be more work to be done, but I think they're connected from kind of the offsite trails, which are the green, and then what would be, I'll call the on-road or the multi-use trail kind of hard surface system, which would be the blue on the collector roads.
Thank you for that. That's good. I think I still just kind of, and I get everything you just said, but we're still seeing those like community parks, or not the community park, the neighborhood parks start on the low density land. And I'm just curious why it wouldn't be started just exactly where you said, but in the medium density, where maybe families looking in an apartment building can look out and see a park and like right there, versus the families that could be looking out over their backyard looking to see the park right there.
Yeah, a fair comment. I think could that arrow shift north and have it and not have any impact on this plan? Absolutely. It could. I don't want to stand here and say we can't move that asterisk because it could shift into that multiple block. I think we were trying to just connect it to that because we know that heritage structure is staying and what connection could be there versus, a heritage structure, then maybe some units, then a park. But I think that there's flexibility there. These aren't fixed. And I think, again, that asterisk and the size and how that park is, it could be different. It could be more linear along the trail up through that multiple than kind of where it is.
Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of a break there, Dave, and we're going to bring in Brett, and he's going to do a bit of a presentation. So there'll be an opportunity still for some more questions and that. So you don't fall asleep back there, but take a little bit of break and then. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Oh, just could we? Would you mind if we took a 2-minute break? I know. Yeah, you want a break or just, yep. Yeah, if we could have a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and we'll be illuminated from Brett's amazing words. So thank you. and waited. We have Brett back to speak to this item.
Great. I think from staff's point of view, we are satisfied that all of the comments that were made by the public and through the technical exercise and technical review, even my own staff comments, which were extensive, they have all been addressed in one way or other through the documents that are in front of you here. It is a big, it's a large project for Center Wellington. It's a large population. We're directing more density here. And I do want to speak a little bit about that. If you, in the staff report, I did make note of how this design for South Fergus secondary plan impacts the County of Wellington land needs assessment. So as you know, the County of Wellington report on the land needs assessment identified that we need 238 hectares of additional land to be added to our urban boundary for community need, and a further 160 hectares for future employment land. And because when that report was done at the county, they said, well, this is pending the results of the South Fergus secondary plan. And what's in front of us tonight does have an impact on those calculations. First of all, in terms of the land use, and from what the county assessment originally had anticipated to where we're at today, there's 34 hectares more community land included in South Fergus. So that offsets the land need the county calculated, reduces it to 204 hectares. But it increases the employment need up to 174 hectares. So that's kind of a net equal. It's just trading one land use for the other. But what the density that's proposed here does make a difference in the amount of land that we need in the future, because this is planned at a much higher density than what the base case that Watson created for the county was, assuming that our greenfield designated area development density is 47 people and jobs per hectare. And that is the reason why we need 238 hectares. South Fergus is being planned at a density that is estimated at 56 people and jobs per hectare. And that by itself reduces the community land need by about 25 hectares by the density being higher. So, in terms of council's strategic direction to mitigate the impact on urban expansion onto prime farmland through the secondary plan density, that we would reduce that need by 25 more hectares than would otherwise be the case. Just wanted to point that out. I also want to point out that related to this project, and Colin's given us a chapter or a paragraph for this report about the Union Street pumping station upgrade. It's currently going through a Schedule B class environmental assessment, and noted that we've done a detailed evaluation of the pumping station in conjunction with this secondary plan and the master environmental servicing plan. So, and the result is, with the preferred alternative, there are no immediate upgrades to the Union Street pumping station required, and the properties on Cummings Crescent, Chambers, and Barnett can be serviced through the construction of a new sanitary sewer on the extension of McQueen Boulevard, and it could convey to the pumping station in the South Fergus land. So those two things have been looked at collectively through this project as well. So certainly from the staff point of view, we're ready to recommend approval. I understand there's some concern that perhaps this gets deferred, and I don't think that a deferral of a couple of weeks is really a big issue as far as timing goes. for this project. We do have, I just want to talk about kind of future, if council adopts the secondary plan, and it is important, this is an official plan amendment and the land use designations are at the official plan level. And as Dave noted, though they have flexible, it's not a zoning bylaw. These are not zoning categories. So the next stage would be for the secondary plan, we would submit it to the County of Wellington for approval. Once it's approved, then the developer landowners would be free to make application for zoning and subdivision. And as Mr. Hassan noted, that's the process where we look in detail about where the park would go, where we are 5% parkland dedication. That is the maximum that we're allowed to take under the Planning Act with each subdivision application. And that's also where the school board gets the opportunity to say yes or no to we want a school site or not. So by example, the Northwest Fergus secondary plan area, which is where Storybrook subdivision is, there's a school site in that plan. When we went through the secondary plan stage, the school board at that time had said, oh, I don't think we need a school site. But when the draft plan of subdivision went through the first phase, they did the numbers and said, hey, we need a school site. And so that's the process whereby the school board gets to say, we want a school site, and then the developer and the school board work together on what the arrangements are for how that gets conveyed. And I am kind of pleased to say, at least in the Storybrook situation, that last week my staff approved the site plan for the school that's going to go in Storybrook. So that's a milestone. Hopefully it gets built sooner rather than later. But so that's really where the detailed design, again, I am confident that through the secondary plan itself and the documents that all of the comments have been addressed. And we looked at where the park should go and those features at a very early stage before we even started talking about the land use. So the active transportation and the parks and the schools and how they would tie together was on our mind and something we looked at very early in the process. Thank you.
Okay. Comments and questions for Brett? Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I know you try, and I know the school boards are involved in early stages. They have their own planners, and for the life of me, I just don't understand why they don't. It's the philosophy, if you build it, they will come, and they wait for the other schools to burst at the seams before they build their school. And then it's sort of after the fact. So I would just hope with this subdivision, there's going to be children needing school, and they should be involved in the early stages, and they should be wanting to decide where they're going to put it. That's, and daycares, it's very clear in this community, we don't have enough daycares. It would be nice for them to get on board and decide where those are going to go to, but I can wish for everything, I'm sure, but thank you for clarifying.
I think the school board itself does that advanced planning, and they do work very closely with us, and they project the need, but the final decision about do you get to buy that school or build that school resides with the Minister of Education. And I'm sure the experience in fast-growing places is the same. The school gets built long after it really should have been, and that's the process we have.
Okay, other comments, questions? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Can you refresh me again, the 5% parkland dedication? So that's just based on our township owned lands. Can you just confirm for me? It's too bad that our Parks and Rec master plan wasn't done kind of before we head into here, but because that plan is we know that we're lacking in a lot of like those services and amenities around here. So how do we, and you look around to other communities, make the developers that are coming in aware of these services and, you know, and maybe decide that they want to like build like we envision the town to be, and, you know, encourage a basketball court or a tennis court or something being picked up by the developers?
Well, we have done that in the case of the park in the Haylock development, Storybrooke. That negotiation did result in the developers paying for more park amenities than legally they were obligated to, and they do that of their own accord. But the reality is we are limited by what the Planning Act says in terms of what we can ask for, and the 5% is a maximum. It certainly is probably not a standard that equates to the amount of open space that we historically might have seen here. I'm trying to find the best way to answer it. We do take measures to kind of encourage developers to, you know, for example, if there's a woodlot, we can't compel them to dedicate it to us, but we calculate the parkland requirement in such a way that it provides an incentive for them to do that. So, and that's why, as Mr. Assam pointed out, we try to integrate all the storm ponds, the parks, the natural heritage features together, so it ends up looking like a much larger open space area. And you can see by the plan, the amount of green, it's like, I'm guessing, but it's probably 30% of the land here. So we do, and then it's development charges that pay for the park actual amenities.
And through Mayor Waters, just to add to Brett's comment, by the time we get to zoning and subdivision on this site, we will have a Parks and Rec master plan, and we've likely incorporated that into our DC study. So that means when we're planning for these subdivisions, we know at that point what we want to put on them. So the timing does work out.
Any other? Yes, Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Just to clarify, maybe with Dan or Brett, you're talking about by the time we get through to the zoning and everything that we would probably have our master plan in place. With our business plan, it has us investigating and begin implementing a community planning permit system. And that's to investigate and to begin implementing. But in here, it's already being addressed as if it's already a tool in our toolbox. Is that something that we're anticipating having in place by the time we get around to doing the plan of subdivisions or the plan of condominiums?
So I can answer that. I think that clause, in order to use a CPPS, you have to have an authorizing clause, and that is why that's particular sentence is in here. Community planning permit system is an alternative to traditional zoning. And the last term of council adopted a recommendation that we proceed in that direction. And where it was left at that time, when we were in the early days here, the county had yet to adopt the kind of authorizing language in their OP. So we suggested that it could go in here in case that the development, the landowner group wants to pursue that option for South Fergus. It is now in the county OP. And I think when you look at the MESP report and Dave's presentation here, the expectation is that the developer group will proceed by traditional zoning and not the CPPS. So I don't think we will have caught up by the time we start looking at zoning for South Fergus. We will not have done the work on implementing a CPPS. So it'll be the traditional zoning that we use and everybody's used to.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So I get a sense that maybe we look at a deferral here because there's a lot of information. We've weighed a lot of things here. Good questions, good comments, but we've been at this for a while now. And I think we need to have little opportunity to go and maybe ask staff some more questions, talk to the community that way. This is going to be one of the biggest decisions you're going to be making, and it's going to really set a tone for the community. And obviously I want you to feel very comfortable about doing it, but there will be a time where you will have to make a decision. These are not things that are going to be way out. That's a decision that we need to sort of deal with more sooner than later. So I'm looking for maybe an opportunity for the couple have a couple of weeks on this. And then we'd looking for staff here. I'm not even reading this recommendation, but looking for staff for some kind of advice in terms of what, timing wise, how would we sort of move that to provide us a bit of a more opportunity that way.
Through you, Mayor Waters, the next council meeting is scheduled for April the 15th. Are you suggesting a deferral to that date?
Yeah, I would think yes. And unless you have a sidebar comment on that, or
Sorry.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if it was possible if I know we can do a committee of the whole and a council meeting, I believe, if we can have a committee of the whole meeting to do more further discussion around the table about this. But not.
I've been looking to staff here to provide us some insight that way.
Okay, the current, Lisa's just pulled up the current council schedule. So we have 2 council meetings scheduled in April. If you're looking for a committee of the whole meeting, we can schedule that meeting separate from the 2 meetings that we currently have in April. And I'd be looking for a suggestion on that date, keeping in mind there's something in April. Is that OSUM or?
It's OGRA.
OGRA. Okay, so that won't impact us. Looking for a separate meeting or changing one of those council meetings into a committee of the whole meeting. Those are your 2 options for April.
So what about a special meeting? Would that be the opportunity for that just on this particular item?
That would work, or change one. Special meeting.
A special meeting on the week of the 15th, or? Do you want to give us direction to defer to a committee meeting and allow staff the opportunity to poll members of council, perhaps beginning tomorrow, to see what date we could entertain? Well, we'd need a motion to defer, just with the instructions that staff schedule that meeting according to council's.
So I'm kind of looking around for head nods. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Through you, just while I'm all for this deferral, but while we had Brett at the podium, I know he sat down, but if you don't mind, just one question while it's top of mind, bring it back to Parkland. Just for clarification. So Parkland is calculated based on the Planning Act.
Yes.
And then there's the option for cash in lieu. Currently, is that through the Planning Act or is that us? Like, can we remove cash in lieu just to
no
ensure?
No, the Planning Act allows us to take 5% of the area of the land in as a dedication of parkland. And as an alternative, if we didn't want the land, we could take cash in lieu. So occasionally we take cash in lieu where we don't think the park would be big enough or usable. But predominantly we take the land.
At this point, but it makes sense, and through you, sorry, follow up, to like eliminate that alternative just to guarantee as much parkland as possible.
I don't think in practice in a large new neighborhood taking cash in lieu would really ever be part of the consideration. So
okay,
I don't, not in a situation like this.
Thank you. I'm sorry to derail that.
Yep. No, no worries. Okay. So we sort of got head nods in here in terms of getting additional time, maybe doing a bit of a straw poll or a poll tomorrow in terms of when we have this meeting. So is that I'm kind of getting that feel here. So I would need someone to put forward that, and maybe what are you thinking in terms of what that recommendation would look like?
I was gonna say what you said there. I think I would move a motion to defer and have staff investigate a proper time for setting up a committee of the whole.
Scheduled in April, maybe?
Yes. April sounds good.
Okay. So I'll just read that again. That council defer consideration of the Fergus secondary plan to committee of whole meeting to be scheduled in April. We haven't picked that date, but we're gonna communicate with you, or staff's gonna communicate with you. Okay, so we have a mover on that, seconder on that, Councillor McDonald. Any further comments or questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, fine, sir.
Just wondering, as far as the meeting when it's set up, I'd like to have a sense. I don't want to give the same presentation again, and maybe that's something that we can work with Brett on, taking some of the questions tonight. We had talked about presenting the design guidelines to you, because I think that would help, and maybe we do that at the next meeting. But maybe if there's some things that, if between now and that meeting we can get a bit of a list of things, because I don't think it'll help if I just show you the same thing, and we want to answer as many questions as possible. That was all.
Yes. A further comment?
Just a comment to that. And I do want to acknowledge all the work the staff has done and our consultants have done. This isn't, I know you guys have been working on this for a long time. I do feel like we keep talking about this pressure from the province, and I don't think a municipality our size is going to see Ford driving up and dumping a bunch of money in our communities like he is in others. And I do feel like we have been meeting our targets very well. And I think it's really important for us to decide how we want our community to look at. So I think taking a bit of extra time in this isn't a reflection of the work that you guys have done. I think it's just showing like the importance of the issue. And we want, to be very careful of how we proceed, and really pushing what we want our community to look like. I've talked about parkland concerns, but 8 stories isn't sitting very comfortable with me either. Our community has a hard time adjusting to the 4 and 5 stories we've already been doing. And we realize that we want people to come back and be able to live in our community and have those housing. So we all see the importance of that. But the 8 stories is hard, especially when it doesn't feel like we can control the rapid building of these homes, but it seems like it's so much more difficult to get the parks and the infrastructure and everything else and the safe highways to come with it. So, like I said, Ford's not dumping money in our community. So I think we can take our time with this.
Okay, thank you for that comment. So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much, Ms. Aston and Emily. Thank you for staff. Thank you for everyone. Brett, please pass on. Thank all staff on this. I know that you've spent a lot of time on this, and we are definitely moving the needle here. So, anyways, so we're going to move on to now draft noise bylaw. Who's going to speak? Is this Adam? Okay.
Adams.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, or evening, rather. The draft bylaw before you today is something I've been working on with member municipalities for over 2 years now. Although only 10 pages, it's took quite a long time to get to here. And personally, based on what we've changed, I think we've captured as much as possible as we can while being respectful of what the other municipalities, their needs are, while meeting ours. Some of the changes that we made was we've added broader definitions, more enforcement tools in terms of, or the ability to adequately enforce this bylaw, as opposed to the previous one, which had some holes in it. The main thing being that we can enforce this township-wide and it's not specific to residential areas anymore. We've got a permitting process through the clerk as opposed to previously going through council. This is beneficial for multiple reasons, but most importantly for the expedited purposes of any permits. We've also added provisions for the rights to enter onto property to inspect for noise, which we have through the Municipal Act. And we've, at the end of the day, we've reviewed this bylaw through not just what the municipalities needed, but also through SV Law, through Eric Davis. And we're quite confident that this bylaw captures any needs or the needs that we have in this municipality. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, council comments, questions. We'll start with Council McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, thank you for doing all that work. I imagine meeting with all 7 townships was not an easy task. So I'm going to give you that for sure. We're the biggest township in Wellington County. So really, with our tourism, we really do outweigh the other ones. I'm not, putting them to the wayside in any way. I just think that this was you probably did a lot more of the work on this than the other ones. I'm just wondering, I'm sure Eric can do a great job at SV Law. I'm just wondering if we should have eyes on from a Crown Attorney's point of view, just to review it all. Sometimes they pick out things in bylaws in municipalities that they know will stick in a court of law. And so just for our own risk management, I think it's a great idea. I'm putting that forward. The other thing is noise. What are the noise hours? Like, I'm not seeing.
So that's under the schedule at the end.
Yeah.
So you got prohibited time. So you've got your general at all times. General.
Okay, so the audible part, does that incorporate? So speakers in the streets, sometimes they're clashing with others, not just here in Elora, but I've noticed in other areas. Would that incorporate that if someone had their speakers outside too loud?
Yeah. So sorry, which section are you referring to?
It was the audible. It was at 3.2F under the bylaw.
Sorry, and what was your question?
Well, under the audible, does that include late night music? Does that include music all day on the streets?
So that
how does that work?
Under the schedule, that's actually more defined, where the operation of any device or group of connected devices intended for the production, reproduction, or amplifications of voices or sound. So any speakers would be covered under that. And
It
so
would. Okay, so that's what that means.
Yeah, and so
Okay,
that would be
that's
covered
great.
under, up until 11 p.m. that would be permitted,
And then,
and then afterwards it'd be prohibited until 7 a.m. the next day or 9 a.m. on Sundays.
okay, and just one more, Mayor Waters. Dogs or dogs in general. I know previous council addressed dogs barking, whining, whatever. I have many neighbors that rely on their dogs to answer their door. They can't hear.
Yeah.
It also is protects our neighborhoods from theft. So I have concerns with any of that language in it. I don't find in Elora we have dogs barking constantly. We have very great dog owners, and we all sort of care about our dogs. So that's where I'm not sure if it ever belongs in here at all.
I don't know if it is in here actually.
I think it was. So was that taken out from previous bylaws, or that's separate?
We deal with excessive dog barking through our animal control bylaw. And as a policy, that's generally if it's consecutive barking nonstop for 5 minutes or greater. That's our general policy that we have under that bylaw. With that comes a noise log and additional enforcement requirements from the complainant to provide us in order to determine if it's a violation.
Well, clearly no one's babysat a Chihuahua, so okay.
Well, and the understanding the understanding that dogs do bark. It's their nature, right? And so we can't prohibit them from barking, but we can do is regulate any excessive barking, right? And so the animal control bylaw does do that.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. That was great.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Thanks for the chuckle, Councillor McDonald. I actually do have some concerns with this bylaw. Respectfully, I'd like to preamble by I also really appreciate the amount of effort that's gone into this. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't think about some of the things until our delegate this evening, and that did bring some things to my mind. I had wondered about the ambiguity of 3.1, that it will disturb someone. That's really ambiguous, that someone might be disturbed whilst someone else may not. I'm also genuinely concerned about another phrase that was used this evening with regards to a battle of the bands on the streets. It's a small street. I've been there. I've seen 2 live bands at the same time. And I can't imagine what it would be like for our homeowners to sleep after a certain hour. So I cannot disagree with our delegate this evening that said maybe there are some points that we can tweak and that we can fine tune. We still have a little bit of time. That's not at all saying I don't deeply appreciate your efforts, but maybe our neighbors have brought up some points for consideration or reconsideration with regard to a couple of the items that were shared this evening. We do have a little bit of time before we pass this before our summer proper begins. And I feel like I would like to see some of those items addressed that were shared. They were some very valid points.
So if I may, I can talk about some, because I walked in through halfway through that delegate's speech. So with respect to section 3.1, that's a broad general catch-all for enforcement officers. Ultimately, it's a matter of discretion. Officers have to utilize if noise is excessive or not. And so that's a general provision that most bylaws would have to allow for that. So to catch any anomalies that may not necessarily be captured within the bylaw, but from a reasonable point of position is excessive. So that's why we have section 3.1. With respect to any loudspeakers on the street, if you're referring to buskering, that's something that's going to be covered under our licensing bylaw eventually once we've drafted that. And that'll be a provision there'll be things about buskering that's captured in that, but this bylaw wouldn't necessarily be that.
Thank you. With the permission of the mayor, I'll just follow up. I'm actually not referring to respectfully buskers. Okay. 2 things that still are standing out for me. One, leaving it to the discretion of the person. Our bylaw officer or officers we're putting so much on these people, parking and noise and smoke and there's so many things that we're looking at, and we have very limited resources with how many people there will be. I think I would rather have some clarity around the regulations. So if there were 2 bands playing, it's a small street. I get the concern. If there's one bar here and one bar here, both hosting live bands, this is going to be a problem. And I'm not sure that we looked at Elora as its unique space and what that small streetscape looks like when everybody wants to have entertainment. I'm by no means asking you to defend your work. It's great. I just think that it is possibly, respectfully, potentially worthy of another sweep over, just with some of the things that we heard tonight.
Through you, Mayor Waters, I just want to maybe explain a few things with the process. The bylaw enforcement officers drafted this, and it was vetted through SB law. We also reached out to the prosecutor, Paul Dre, and the definitions and some of the provisions are directly from him. The ambiguity is important in this bylaw, believe it or not, for enforcement purposes. It gives us the tools we need, should we need them. The broadness of it. I know usually bylaws are very specific, but this is one where the broadness goes in our favor as far as prosecutions go. So there is a reason for it. We've had numerous legal opinions on this. And because it is a countywide bylaw, we maybe are pushing for this more so than some of the others. Welfare Amasa is in the same situation, but it gives us all the tools that we need to enforce it. Should we choose it? Some municipality like Puslinch, Ms. Barron indicated that, they're not in the same league as we are as far as noise, but it does give them the exact same tools that we have to enforce it, and the broadness of it is important in this case. That's if we gained anything from this process, that's what is needed. And also the importance is that each bylaw be exactly the same in order for the OPP to enforce it. If it is not the same, we will not have OPP enforcement. We will be on our own. That is a fact, and I believe Minto has passed it, and Welfare Amasa and Wellington North. It has gone through committee and is just waiting for council approval. So it is important that you trust the work that was put into it, as well as the legal opinions that we have received. That in the event that we're not able to prosecute. We'll be right back with a fix, but the set fines have already been pre-approved. Yep. We will be ready to go as soon as this is adopted.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Waters. I think Carrie kind of answered it, but just to clarify, that is for the ambiguity of it. Is that why there is no? Where a delegation was talking about numbers like decibels and things like that, is that why that is not included? And if fireworks, she was saying that she didn't see the fireworks, is that under another bylaw?
Yes, fireworks is under another bylaw, which I understand will perhaps be under review at some point in time, but it is absent from this because most municipalities have a separate bylaw in that regard. The decimal, we were actually steered away from that approach, in that we do not have the equipment, we do not have the trained resources to use that equipment, and the way the bylaw is drafted is a much better approach for our current resources.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you for letting me know that Paul Dre was involved. So that's sort of icing on the cake with what can happen at court and how it can stand up. And so OPP is okay with all this. They can, whatever you recommend, they can take it and run with it. So
yes, the County of Wellington was at the table, and I believe they've been they are the conduit between the Police Services Board. So they've made that connection for us, and as long as the bylaws are all identical, they will help. They will be the enforcement tool along with Satnam as well.
Councillor Evi.
Thank you, through you, sir. Final question. So to be clear again for our community members, are they entitled and invited to call? I mean, this is going to, we know from experience, it's been a problem. And I'm concerned about people being so frustrated, us knowing that both Satnam and OPP are on board, are we going to then inundate our teams with regular phone calls when people are frustrated? And I just am trying to mitigate or get in front of some potential concerns as we clearly are going to roll this forward.
We just have to be cognizant too of the fact that the noise bylaw is one tool in the tool chest when you have more or less incompatible uses, the residential and the bars, if that's what we're talking about, those perhaps are incompatible uses. So the noise bylaw cannot be our only tool. It is a tool, and it may not be the most effective tool. The AGCO could possibly be involved. The business owners have to take responsibility in this as well. So we can't put the onus entirely on the noise bylaw to fix this use that really pares down to incompatible uses, and perhaps neighbors need to each do their own part in being good neighbors.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I think last summer was probably the worst I've seen it, and I heard it. So I understand where our delegation is coming from. This isn't just for Elora. This is for all of Center Wellington and Wellington County. I see that. Where noise is concerned, I don't want to see OPP officers coming out for noise because they're costly. And I just want to make sure our bylaw officers have the best that they can to support our complaints. And so if you feel as the manager of the bylaw, then I'm good with it.
Through you, I'm trusting our legal advice and trusting the work that went into this. The officers know the bylaw inside and out because they've lived it for, you say 2 years. For me, we've been wanting this for at least 4 years. So it's long overdue, and please be assured that if once we start using the document, that if there's something we can improve upon, we will reconvene the groups and we will look at it again. But it is important that we all share the same bylaw and share in the enforcement.
Any other comments or questions? And sometimes you have to look at these things as a living document, because we needed to move on this, and this has been in the works for a number of years now, and this it definitely has been elevated, and just the amount of the folks that have been involved with the review and the scrutiny of this is at a very high level. So I think it's time we move this on, and if in time there seems to be issues, then when we can come back and visit this. But I think it's important that we sort of move this on so we can get on the job of looking after the community in this way. So. Thank you. So I have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a new noise bylaw and repeal bylaw 5001-05. Okay, do I have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Wilton. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input that way. Okay, so let's go down to item 12.3, vendor of record for water meter infrastructure, and we'll welcome. Hello, Dino.
Good evening, Council. The last man standing, apparently. Good evening, Council. Through you, Mayor Waters. This report in front of you today is to gain support from Council for a vendor of record for our meter infrastructure. That's water meter infrastructure. So approximately 20 years ago, the township had decided to move forward with a metering for water and wastewater charges and rate structures. At that time, Neptune was the manufacturer of choice, Neptune water meters. We have stayed with Neptune through both replacement and expansion of our system, both for small residential meters as well as large industrial meters. And as we move forward, examining the options are very, very limited in terms of expanding our water meter infrastructure to other providers simply because of the cost. So the report in front of you spells out some of those costs. Neptune is our preferred manufacturer. Neptune does not distribute their own manufactured items. They have distributors. So Evans Supply Limited is the distributor. Well, it's the distributor for the Neptune products, but they have exclusive rights to this area. So they are our only provider for the Neptune products. So the resolution in front of you is to provide that endorsement of vendor of record for those two companies.
Okay. Comments, questions from council? Oh, yes, Councillor Evoy.
Just very briefly through you, sir. I know recently we've discussed looking at vendors of choice in other categories, parcels, however we put them. How often is this particular section revisited to find that VOC?
For water meters specifically?
Yeah.
Typically, when we establish a roster or vendor of record, they're in place for 5 years with option to renew. And in the case of vendors of record, or rather rosters, usually have various intervals within that contract period where you can invite others to join. This is a vendor of record, so it would effectively be a non-competitive or a single source. So we could have that in place with a finite amount of time to revisit at any time at council's discretion.
May I follow-up question? Without naming any direct point, you and I know that we've had discussions about other vendors of record and on the roster, and it was made pretty clear that it wouldn't be reviewed until 5 years. So I'm not sure I completely understand what you're saying about it could be, and am I to understand from Dino that there are no others that we could be giving an opportunity to?
In this particular instance, it's a single source, so a non-competitive award with them being the vendor of record. So they would be the last word for this particular provision. And others where we're establishing a roster of vendors, then you would have those that were invited and participate and are awarded to be part of that roster for a set period of time with the opportunity to add more on as that progresses.
Okay, Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. And so what is the increased expenditure for doing the single source procurement vendor?
In this particular instance, there would be no additional cost. We would continue with that vendor for the service provision that they've been providing for
forever
to this point.
Okay.
But with anything, if we were to go against this, I think what Dino was alluding to is having to go wholesale replacement of all of our vendors and our software, which would be a significant cost to the township.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was clarifying. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Dino. Please go home. So we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington establish the following vendors as vendors of record to support work related to the water meter infrastructure as follows. 1, Neptune Technology, Inc. as the water meter infrastructure manufacturer of choice. Number 2, Evans Supply Corporation as the vendor of record for Neptune meter infrastructure. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Welton, seconder on that. Councillor Jefferson, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Now we'll move down to application to delete restrictive covenant from the title to 597 Glengarry Crescent, Newton Industries. We have a report from Brett. Welcome back, Brett.
Thank you. Hopefully this is a pretty simple and straightforward item. New Dawn Industries have applied recently for site plan approval for an addition. So in doing so, we register site plan agreement on title, and during that process. The legal counsel for New Dawn pointed out that there's an old Town of Fergus restrictive covenant on the title that talks about if the land is vacant and they want to sell it, they have to offer it first to the Town of Fergus. And since the site is not vacant, that covenant's no longer required. So I'm seeking council approval for me to be able to execute whatever legal documents are required to remove that.
Comments, questions, council, or nope? Okay. So no comments or questions. So you're the mover on that. Okay. Seconder on that, Councillor Adams. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Central Wellington authorize the Managing Director of Planning and Development to execute an application to delete restrictive covenants with respect to Newton Industries Limited, 597 Glengarry Crescent, Fergus. Any further comments or questions on that? All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Okay, we move down to item 12.5, amendments to the procedural bylaw 2021-31, report from Carrie O'Kane.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Waters. As a result of recent changes made to the order of proceedings to include the land acknowledgement and the consent agenda, staff took the opportunity to review the entire bylaw, and we put forward some suggestions for you this evening. We included updates to the electronic meeting provisions to include hybrid participation, provisions with respect to the consent agenda, adding the land acknowledgement, adjustments to the notice provisions for the advisory committees to better align with current practices. We are introducing a reduction in the time limit and restrictions on the number of opportunities a delegate may appear and the time. Adjustment to the meeting curfew. We all know that wasn't working for us. And just some minor punctuation and grammatical errors were corrected. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carrie. Comments, questions? Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, the delegations, 10 minutes to 5 minutes. I just know that some of the delegations that we've had, they go to great lengths with drawings and sometimes a little PowerPoint presentation, and we want it. I want it to be as open as possible. So I see that you have where we could extend it like at the time. Is that enough? I'm just going to put it out there.
You can't fault me for trying. No, in all seriousness, this is that's why that provision is in there. In the instances where you have a delegation that goes on, there is a provision to extend that time frame. But where the 5 minutes is best used is where you have 12 or 15 delegations, or where time is important, and we really would it's of course up to the chair, but it's more important to be used in that instance than it is with one or two delegations. The 5-minute rule in multiple delegations is to afford everybody equal opportunity to speak, and they have your equal attention. They're not speaking at 10:30 at night where others had your attention at 6. So it's just a method of improving the efficiency in the event that we have numerous delegations, and time is important in efficiency. But by no means are we expecting to limit. But sometimes when they know they have 5 minutes, they come focused, they come prepared, and 5 minutes is really ample time. The 10 minutes is still there for community delegations and other presentations. So it's just on the delegation portion that we've suggested a 5-minute reduction.
Councillor Evelyn.
Through you, actually, I have to agree, and I'm not as happy to accept that answer. I apologize. Although I've never seen 20 delegates come in, I'm sure that is a possibility. And I believe that if there's something that important that 20 people are showing up, that they probably got a lot to say. And I would be really reluctant to give them less than 10 minutes. You could put it in the wording 5 to 10 minutes and hope rather than say 10, but maybe say 5 to 10 and see if that would encourage some to be shorter. But we've seen some that have been 2 minutes. So I'm not sure that I love the message, respectfully, of saying you get 5 minutes. The other thing I wanted to address was the 3-hour thing. And I heard your language when you said it hasn't been working. I think that we can look at the reason why. Maybe because of the lack of opportunity, respectfully, for us to have conversation. Maybe that's why that 3 hours sometimes doesn't work. I'm not entirely sure. I think I would really, really like to look at my colleagues and see what we're thinking around that, whether or not it's 3 or 4 hours, because I don't think anybody, I think all of us could have a voice in that decision, but appreciate the efforts that you and the staff have gone to on this.
Yes, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I don't think we're under the same time limits as some of the other reports that we are with this one. It is largely a housekeeping issue. And I do think, looking back earlier tonight when we looked at like large reports like the South Fergus secondary plan, in our new 2-council kind of format, that sometimes we need more information. So I would wonder if my colleagues would be open to also maybe doing a deferring on this item until, maybe as we get through, our committee of the whole and see how like a big report like this goes through, and maybe defer this for maybe 2 council meetings, maybe then, if there's interest on the floor.
Councillor Wilton.
Yeah, I would just echo Councillor Adams' suggestion that I think some of these things, because I noticed quite a few things, and something that would have helped is if we had the original, like a track change version almost, I guess would be easiest to describe, just so as you're reading through it, you could be like, oh, this is, and maybe even the rationale why the change. Because if we're not going to have committee of the whole meetings, or I prefer if it was in a committee of the whole meeting where there was a bit more of a presentation about what the changes were and why, just would make it easier, because we might put in here 5 minutes knowing around the table we don't really mean 5 minutes, but if it's in the document, the next council might not mean that, and we'll slowly whittle away public participation in that way. There's other things about whether delegations can go to committee first or council first, so some of those things I think deserve a little more just thought and discussion, and just kind of understanding the pros and cons of some of those changes would be helpful to me. So if we could have some more time one way or the other, whether that is at a committee of the whole meeting or at the next council meeting, just with more time to maybe reflect on the changes and maybe have a track change version sent out or something like that, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Or so I'm going to take some blame for more than 3-hour meetings. As you know, sometimes there is a clock here. You might notice, and Carrie does do this to me, but I do let people speak. I give people, I know, and that's also the opportunity for the chair to do that. But I've never really cut off people's debate or discussion that way, because I know it's important for people to speak why they're here. So anyway, so I will take blame for that. Sorry, I apologize. I'll take you out to lunch or something. But I'll take some of that blame. But I think you have. Oh yes, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to comment that I love that we're able to speak all we want, and that's part of. Sometimes it jars. Oh yeah, I remember this, and oh yeah, I wanted to say this, and that's just part of having a healthy conversation, and we want it to be thoughtful conversation in this chamber. So I'm okay with going a little bit longer. That's okay with me. We've all made it till 11:15 sometimes.
Any other comments or questions? So I'm not going to read this recommendation. So does somebody want to? Okay, yeah. Were you going to put up your hand?
No.
Okay.
I was going to remind you that Councillor Adams had.
Yes. So did we craft something, or you had something you wanted to craft, or that way?
For you, Chair Carey, did you want to confirm what you had? I think I had moved to defer for two council meetings. Unless there's interest in having a committee, go to committee of the whole, I'm open either way. But initially I had said two council meetings, sorry.
It makes no difference to us. I'm just wondering if we're already having a committee of the whole special meeting, would it be unrealistic to combine this with the other topic, or is that too much for one meeting?
We can do that. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
And I have to say, I think I'm more productive too. Our committee of the whole meeting used to start at 2 p.m, not 6. And when we went to just council meetings, we only start at 6. For my, once a month. Right. Once a month we started at 2, and once a month we started at 6. Oh, how come?
If there was not enough.
And you wonder why these meetings go 3 hours.
Like, where's our 2 o'clock meeting?
Council defer?
That council defer consideration of a draft procedural bylaw to the committee of the whole meeting to schedule. I was going to be. I was going to say schedule. That's really a more modern term, but be scheduled in April, because we're still looking to figure out when that April is. Yep. So are you good with that? Yes. So you're the mover. Who's the seconder on that? Councillor Wilton. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Okay, so we're out of our all our things there, and now we're moving down to bylaws.
I take that one out too.
Oh, yes. Where was that one now?
This one.
Oh, yeah.
So it's only this one that's going.
Okay. Okay, bylaws. 6001-24, a bylaw to regulate, prohibit, and otherwise control noise in the Township of Centre Wellington, and to repeal bylaw 5001-05. Recommendation that bylaws, which one was
bylaw?
Oh, that one's out. Yep. And that what was the other one? Where this one's out. Yep. Okay. That a recommendation that bylaws 6001-24 be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal affixed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, a seconder on that. Councillor Evoy. Comments, questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? So moved. Okay, we've got that sorted out. Notice of motions.
None.
Motions where a notice have been given. Confirmatory bylaw. Hold on a second here.
It's going to be number 10.
Number 10.
Yeah.
Hold on. 2024.
Yep. 10.
10.
Yep.
Okay. That bylaw 2024-10 be confirmed. The proceedings of council at its meeting held March 25th, 2024 be introduced a first, second, and third time and passed in open council. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor McDonald, seconder on that. Councillor Wilton. All those in favor? So moved. Do I have a mover for adjournment? Councillor Jefferson, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald. All those in favor? So move. You want to stay, Councillor Evoy? Anyways, thank you everyone for this lovely evening and your good questions.